Thank you, Palak. Good evening, one and all present here. I, Nidhi Jadon, on behalf of the entire IIHMR family, want to express my heartfelt gratitude towards our guest speakers who have enriched our mind with some interesting as well as informative insights on innovations in hospital management through technology. When we talk about the hospital management industry, we must not forget another industry which goes hand in hand with it, the pharmaceutical industry, which works with the health and chemical sciences and ensures the safe and secure use of pharmaceutical drugs. Pharmaceutical management has come up in recent years as an important discipline, preparing careers in pharmaceutical marketing, management, sales, and other fields related to industry. So, on that note, we kick off Track 3, which is dedicated to pharmaceutical management. I invite the guest speakers to enlighten us with their views on the topic and would take this opportunity to introduce session speakers of Track 3, that is pharmaceutical management. I would now like to welcome session chair Ms. Gauri Chaudhari, founder of brand Innerworld and communication advisor to Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance. She is an advertising, branding, and marketing expert with over 27 years of experience and is a co-founder of Brand in a World, a brand consultancy firm specializing in healthcare and pharmaceutical brands. Ms. Gauri is also a communication advisor to Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance. Moving on to the next session speaker. It is an honor to welcome Mr. Ashok Jain, Executive Director of Microlabs Limited India. He is responsible for managing close to 500 million USD business of India, America, Australia, and new initiatives. Mr. Ashok has successful career spanning over 40 years in the pharma industry. He has been actively associated with industry forums such as IPA, Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance. He is also associated with premium management institutes like IIM Ahmedabad and NIMS. He's going to share his thoughts on the topic innovation and brand building. It is an honor to welcome another gem speaker, Ms. Farida Hussain, Chief Marketing Officer at USV Private Limited. She is responsible for emerging market business in India. She has 30 years of experience in pharmaceutical industry and has played various roles including medical, marketing, business development, sales, and head of businesses. Ms. Farida Hussain is going to impart her insights on the topic Innovation Customer Connect in the pharma industry. Moving on to the next session speaker, I would now like to welcome Mr. Sandeep Khandelwal, Head of Business, Dr. Reddy's Lab. He has over 23 years of general management, sales, marketing, and functional leadership experience with sectoral expertise across healthcare, FMCG, consumer durables, and geographical expertise across South Asia. Mr. Sandeep Khandelwal will share his thoughts on the topic innovation in pharma sales and marketing. Next, it is an honor to welcome Mr. Sanjiv Navangul, Managing Director at Bharat Serums and Vaccines based in Amarnath, Maharashtra. Previously, he has served on the board of Johnson & Johnson Private Limited India and Fulford India. He held several leadership roles through his 30 years career, such as Managing Director for Janssen Pharmaceutical Division of Johnson & Johnson and India and South Asia, Managing Director for MSD Pharmaceutical Philippines, and Commercial Director for MSD India and South Asia. He has also served as the Vice President of OPPI, Organization of Pharmaceutical Producers of India from 2014 to 2019. Mr. Sanjiv Navangul will impart his knowledge on the topic, convergence as innovation in today's healthcare. I would now like to hand over the session to Session Chair, Ms. Gauri Chaudhari.
Thank you, Nidhi. Thank you for your kind words. And let me at the onset congratulate IIHMR and Professor Sodani for organizing this wonderful session. Innovation is the hot topic today, and every one of us are interested in understanding the ways around it. The pandemic has actually created so many opportunities to innovate. And the way the vaccines have come into the play, how the repurposing of the entire health ecosystem happened, all of that has actually given rise to a lot of things. The pandemic actually made us think about ways to do things very differently. So this is the very relevant topic for today. In fact, the pandemic taught us to do things in a manner where patients could see their doctors without actually seeing them. Doctors could actually touch so many lives without actually touching them or being able to touch the patients. The patient space has changed entirely. Today, if we see that entire avoidance of illness has now moved to actually looking at how do we embrace wellness. Interestingly, we did some studies and we realized this entire ecosystem of healthcare has changed, where patients are now considering themselves as consumers of health. And that gives another paradigm altogether, because patient is looked in a particular manner, but a consumer, who is always the king, looks at healthcare and the healthcare brands very differently. So today the question is that how can we actually make this entire healthcare ecosystem and treat it in a very innovative and a very different manner? And what is the best way to do it? To understand it from the veterans. The four panelists today have not only done the business and where they looked at various aspects of business in an innovative manner, but they also executed it. They executed it and delivered it to the entire Indian health space, where doctors and the patients all across and during the pandemic have only thanked pharmaceutical industry. So how do we do that? As students, you would be very intrigued to know that if we have seen if we have seen the change in past 2 years, mind blowing. Actually, going ahead, you're going to witness the world which is going to change every 3 months, and just for fast forward 20 more years, and you will realize the world is going to change every 11th day. That is the power of technology. So today we are entering into a new space where there is a very different ecosystem, where patient is at the center. The doctors and patient both are being both are actually empowered with technology, AI, Internet of Things, wearable devices. So how do we do business? So today we have Mr. Ashok Jain. He's going to talk to us about how do we actually build brands innovatively. We have Mr. Sanjiv Navangul, who is going to talk to us about convergence of the entire innovation space. We have Ms. Farida. She will tell us how actually she helped connect customers when it was so very difficult, to actually even to open a window of dialogue with them. And of course, we have Mr. Sandeep Khandelwal, who will tell us what kind of innovation happened in sales and marketing, and how we all, as this healthcare professionals and the students, how do we look at innovation very differently? So I encourage all of you to listen to their wisdom and also have a lot of questions at the end, because this is not going to be one-way dialogue. Our interaction and understanding from them is going to be the way forward. So Mr. Sanjiv Navangul, I'm giving this to you now to tell us what is convergence of innovation? What happens? How does all of us become innovative in everything that we do around the business?
So good evening, everyone. I have purposely maybe made the topic so confusing so that people maybe ask me why this is so. but I have great friends here in Ashok and Farida and of course Sandeep, who probably will give great examples of how today's world is moving. So, and they are much better at that than me. So I had an idea to put across the future to the audience. That what are we looking at? Where are things moving? Why things will move in a particular way? So that's the reason I said, let's look at innovation from a convergence point of view and why convergence is necessary. So to me, this is all about power shift. There is a huge power shift happening in healthcare, which is underlying all the changes that we are seeing. And that power shift is overshadowing everything that we are looking at. And that power shift is from the healthcare providers or supporters or service providers to the patient. Because the patient is also shifting, as you mentioned, Gauri, appropriately, that patient is shifting from being a patient to a consumer. And that is not pure consumerism in a simplistic way, but patients have started to think about their well-being in a much different way. And I'll try and take you through a few slides to explain why I feel that these changes are going to impact all of us. Unless leaders start thinking about it from a much more higher plane and start thinking about it philosophically, how this industry will shape, we will end up very tactically on trying to react to everything rather than understand it from a strategic point of view. So let me just share my screen and yeah. I hope everybody can see my screen. Yeah. So look, these are some of these say information that I'm sharing has been shared by different agencies, and so it's not primarily my IP that I'm sharing here. But look, as I mentioned, patients are pushing everybody to change and integrate technology, innovation, and science. And this is quite interesting what is happening. That patients are demanding that, look, if so much is changing around us, then don't tell me that innovation is now creating another chemistry compound or a biotech compound. What does it mean to our industry is that, look, if I create a compound, is it going to help the patient in a better outcome? No longer are we able to dangle the promise of clinical trials. No longer are we able to dangle data from different data sets and say, okay, this is how the drug worked, or this is how the solution worked in a setting which was in a clinical trial setting. Patients saying, look, tell me what is happening to me today. So these kinds of changes are going to drive healthcare management in a much different way. It is also forcing everybody to look at, am I only a provider of a chemical compound or a biotech compound? The pharmaceutical industry is starting to think a little more, lest we end up as a supply chain company, that we just produce medicines and somebody else takes over the services and we leave open the space to everybody else. Which is fine, it can happen, and some companies might welcome it, some companies might like it, but that's not the future how pharmaceutical companies will have to behave. And therefore, pharmaceutical companies will have to start now looking at being healthcare companies. Different kind of innovation is coming through different kinds of people. So it is no longer the prerogative and the preserve of just scientists in our pharmaceutical industry who think that innovation is driven by them. And that's because of several layers of convergence that is happening in terms of what can be done in terms of technology and reaching out to the patient. And therefore, this system has to end up being a patient-centric ecosystem. This is one of those biggest changes that are happening. And therefore, what are going to be the drivers of this change? One change that is happening rapidly is treatments are moving from chemistry to biotechnology, from small molecules to large molecules. And the reason being that people are now looking at better outcomes and safety rather than just looking at producing something in a chemical way which will symptomatically relieve patients. So an RA patient is looking at reversal, or even in diabetes, people are saying, okay, if it's an inflammation disease, can we see reversal of this disease? And that's not going to be possible through chemistry. That's going to be possible more through biotechnology. So there is a big drive going on world over. You just have to look at the valuation of companies which are not pharmaceutical companies or biotech companies, and you get there. You understand why this is happening. The other one is reach of technology, which is helping everyone around us to reduce transaction costs that we had, or transaction time that we had in everything. As a patient, I can sit at home and consult my doctor and not to travel, nor waste my time, nor run around on transport, not run around on trying to wait in the doctor's chamber. Nothing is required. It saves a lot of convenience time, and it starts to become a very different world. And everything, you know, whether I want a diagnostic test, whether I want anything else, whether I want my medicines, everything can be dealt with in a much better way in technology. And therefore, it is trying to save transaction costs in a big way, and therefore will improve service to the patients in such a way that even the traditional doctor to patient or a healthcare provider to a patient ratios will undergo dramatic changes. So look at it from all this that is happening. But there are headwinds to this innovation. And the headwinds is, I don't think our regulatory agencies understand this stage, at this stage. They are flummoxed by the kind of changes that are coming. They're flummoxed by the products that are coming for approvals. We remember when COVID started and we as a company went to the DCJ and said, no, we want to do a dynamic trial. The first question of the ACC and the DCJ office members who were present was, what is this dynamic trial? We don't even know what this is all about. So you have to explain what a dynamic trial is, why phase 1 and phase 2 can be combined, why safety and efficacy can be combined in the early stages of a trial. And so this is going to be a big challenge, that how regulatory agencies move. The second is that though access is getting created for innovative treatments, expanding it, that access is going to become a challenge, because there are newer players coming into this field who don't understand health from the health reasons. And I'll give you a very classic example. Google has tried to be a health company 4 times in the last 15 years and failed every time. So Google has been, from a health standards point of view, been quite a very below average failure company. When people think it's one of the most innovative companies, in reality, in health, it just showed that it is incapable of handling high knowledge and expertise. So there are issues in access, expanding access, because the new players are not understanding the way of access to patients. So we need to find a solution there. The other one that I think is happening, and which I think every company is trying to do, is looking at what they can offer to the patients beyond what they produce. And one of the things is, the whole story of how real world analysis is coming in. Today, data of real world patients is becoming far more important. The importance of patient reported outcomes, PROs. Tomorrow's world is all about PROs and real world outcomes. It is no longer about clinical trials. And this is going to be the change. Even in COVID vaccines, vaccines take years to really tell us what is the real efficacy. But then, have we not relied on technology-based data? Have we not relied on real-world evidence to say, okay, it looks okay, let's go ahead and use the product? So this is how things are going to move. The other one that is going to happen is that besides treatment, wellness is going to come in a much bigger way. The digital health story, all of us are wearing these kinds of watches and trying to monitor ourselves, trying to get signals. So the continuous glucose monitoring machines, everywhere patients are now trying to participate in their own treatments. And this is a very, very big change that is happening. And therefore that convergence is very, very interesting. And obviously, you cannot just take patients for granted in trying to tell them, okay, this is the treatment and this is how it will be done. Patients are going to ask you questions. So that's going to be another very, very big change. I have here a few examples. It will take a lot of time to explain through the examples, but these are examples that just tell us that how technology incorporation in the whole treatment story is trying to change many things. Look, if I would have said 2 years ago, I had backed a company who started telling me that gene mapping will help us in trying to decode diagnostics in infections. People would have laughed at me and said, oh, what are you talking? There's a long way, far way off. How can gene mapping do that? In COVID, we did that. So in just 2 years' time, it has gone from a realm of idea to something that is effectively working in the marketplace. And now we can do it for many, many more platforms. So for TB, we are able to use it. We are able to use it for actually taking antimicrobial resistance on properly. So there is a lot of things that are happening, and many global companies are coming up, which are very different and in nature and in practice than what they were. In India, I'll give you a very simplistic example. In India, this whole story of PharmEasy buying ThyroCare, there are many, many, many stories around it, and many, let's say, thinking around why this could have happened. A simplistic way. People are realizing access to patients and providing services to patients is probably the most important thing that needs to be done. You cannot think I'm a diagnostic company, I'm a pharmaceutical company, I'm a distribution company. Those days are gone. Those days are gone where you can think differently about everything. Patient is saying, look, I'm sitting here. I need all the services together. You bundle it up and give it to me. I'm not going to keep searching for everything. I have spent decades trying to go inside a hospital and trying to find a department, because there is not a single small map at the reception to tell me which department lies where in the hospital. I'm no longer going to suffer that. And therefore, you see this convergence happening everywhere. So I think the mood story of all innovation that you're seeing, and there is a lot of innovation that is happening. I personally back and mentor a lot of these innovative stories. And I'm amazed at the kind of things that people bring to the table. I've been recently talking to a company which does remote management of ICUs. They are able to flex. They are able to use very high grade, costly equipment at different places in the country by just being able to create a partnership with a logistic company where it is required, where it is not required. They're able to provide enough support in terms of infection control, in terms of trying to find out several aspects of how patient treatment can be done. So there is a sense of elation that I feel that these kind of convergences are going to ultimately help patients feel in a much better space than they were yesterday. Are we there? Probably not. It's a long way away. But is it going to be quicker than anticipated? Certainly so. So therefore, I believe that tomorrow's world is all about convergence. The day that pharmaceutical companies can think that they are pharmaceutical company which produces tablets and injections are gone. It is time each of our members companies grow up and understand that the future is going to be very, very different. So let me stop here. There's enough and more to be discussed. So Gauri, let me hand it over back to you and we can take it from there. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sanjiv. A very important point. I think what you very importantly said is that divisions are blurring. There are no more silos, and hence the need for convergence. And that itself is an innovative approach to anything that we do. I mean, honestly, just a line I just read somewhere which says that, tomorrow's solutions, the medicinal solutions, are going to be co-creation of not only scientists and maybe doctors, but also patients. I mean, we are already seeing people like Tina Aswani, Om Prakash, actually, who is a patient of Crohn's syndrome, actually goes and addresses the scientists to tell them where it hurts the most, because the patient who goes through day in and day out has certain expectations and has so much more to tell. So convergence, not only in various specialties, but also all the stakeholders of healthcare ecosystem is going to be the future. So very brilliant point and very important for the future generation to understand it. Going from there, Sandeep, I'm sure a lot of challenges do come when it comes to innovatively look at sales and marketing. And it has been a roller coaster ride. With every wave coming, we really didn't know how to reach out to our customers. How did you manage it? And what are those innovative approaches to actually, build sales teams and marketing teams to arrive where you set out to?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I think Gauri, an interesting topic, and thank you, Sanjeev, for giving the segue for me to jump into this piece of the topic. Maybe what I'll do is I'll quickly try to get my presentation on, and just let me know when do you see it? Is it visible?
Not yet. Yeah, now it's sharing.
Yeah. So broadly, if I were to look at it, I couldn't agree more with what Sanjeev spoke about. And I think one big change that we see in Gauri and team is one from an industry which was very powered from back end, right? Where a large part of the industry driver being R&D, manufacturing, supply chain. What we are now seeing is slowly the themes are changing. The demand from the pharmaceutical company is changing big time. A simple examples, right? If I were to talk about how the last 2.5, 3 years have changed us, there was a time when I would start my morning with a newspaper, right? A Times of India or a Hindustan Times or whatever. Now, actually, the way we consume news is on the mobile, and we almost get instant bites. The way we consume food, I'm sure all of us are eating far more, but we're eating in our house through the Zomatos and
Excuse
the
me, Sandeep ji, can you just do the full screen?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it better now?
Yes, perfect. Now it's perfect.
Yeah. So clearly, I think one big change that we're seeing is that the consumer is changing very quickly. And obviously, as the consumer is changing, as the consumer that we are servicing is changing, it also is forcing back for us to change, right? So from selling a pill to actually selling a pill plus service or selling a disease management spectrum, right? I'm sure a lot of us are wearing wearables. We are now used to this whole world of telemedicine. The fact that we are having this seminar on a virtual platform is clearly a signal to how the world has changed. And I'm sure there are a lot of terms that everybody has heard about: digital therapeutics, e-pharmacies, innovative insurance products. But if I were to broadly look at it, I think there are certain key visible changes that we're seeing in the industry, especially at the front end. If I were to talk about from a channel perspective, we were used to a world where traditional doctors and traditional pharmacies were what we were used to. We would typically have around 9 lakh doctors and almost equivalent chemists across the country. To today, the patient-doctor ratio was a huge problem as far as India was concerned. Now, what's happened is a huge bit of change that we're seeing because of the channel play coming in, where hospitals are becoming far more important. We have now had organized retail coming in. A fairly substantial part of our business is now getting catered through the e-pharmacies of the world, the 1mgs, the PharmEasys. Now, what obviously all this means is that the capability of the pharma industries also needs to change accordingly. So, for example, key account management capability are having multiple channel platform compared to a linear channel that we used to have. I think the biggest change that we are seeing, at least in the second bucket, is where if I can say so, from a very sales-driven industry, now we are forced to having a very marketing focus. Content is becoming king. I know you guys are all hooked on to the seminar today, but if in none of us talk, it's very easy for you guys to switch off compared to a physical face-to-face session. And clearly what we're realizing is the big brands are becoming more and more important. The big brands are saying that they need to mean something beyond just delivering a pill. The lifestyle management is something that there are a lot of organizations are today focusing upon. Apart from a brand talking to the consumer through the doctor, what we are now also looking at is how does the brand directly talk to the consumer. I'm sure in this whole COVID world, all of us are used to the fact of taking the Dolo equivalent medicine or the azithromycin, and these are conversations which were largely initiated by the doctors, which have now entered our drawing rooms. The whole vitamin C and the vitamin that all of us would have consumed big time in the last 2.5, 3 years. I think the other piece that's changing also big time is the whole digitalization of ways of working. Our biggest line item in the pharmaceutical business used to be the medical rep, the hands and legs that we had in the market. And typically it was a very inefficient model of us servicing the doctor. So typically you will, a med rep will cover anything between 10 to 13 doctors in a day. And there used to be a huge amount of unproductive time that used to typically be there. So in a world where the brand was talking to the doctor through the MR in the clinic, now what we are doing is ensuring that the MR also talks to the doctor outside the clinic through the whole multi-channel way of connecting, ensuring that he uses SMS, WhatsApp, the omni-channel way of connecting. Also look at third-party platforms that a doctor frequents, right? So now we are looking at pathways of how does the brand talk to the doctor without the MR being in the middle. So all of a sudden, conversations around share of voice, share of wallet has started coming into the pharma sector, which was not something which was there. And I think clearly one thing that COVID has forced us to look at is look at the MR productivity in a very, very different manner. What it obviously means is there needs to be a huge amount of upskilling which the industry has to do. It means that the med rep needs to understand selling beyond what he was to do in the 2 minutes in the doctor's clinic. I spoke about the fact that content is now becoming king. Clearly, the only way if we need to digitally talk to a doctor, I need to know more about the doctor, right? So which means how I would talk to, for example, Gauri would be something very different how I would talk to a Farida. Their interest areas are different, and hence all of a sudden personalization of the HCP is becoming very important as far as the marketer is concerned. So what is the interest area that a particular HCP has compared to the other, and how do we ensure that we cater it accordingly to that? For that, obviously, what it means is that we need to know the doctor far more intimately than what we have known in the past. So elements around the demographics of the doctor, the psychographics of the doctor, where does he or she frequent, what are their interest areas, and how do we ensure that our content that we deliver to the doctor caters to all of this. And I think all of this is only relevant if the organization are able to do something with the data, right? So just to give you an example, Dr. Reddy has been on an iPad for the last 5 years, which means every time when my med rep goes and details to the doctor is the information that I've captured. So what I mean by that information is how much second has the doctor spent on that page, whether the doctor likes the emotionally driven page far more than the scientifically driven page. And those are elements like this now which are available to us. What this means is it means crazy amount of data, crazy amount of the databasing that we need to do. But it also means that as leaders and as pharma veterans, we need to also understand and appreciate data analytics far more than what we've done in the past. So clearly, I think huge amounts of changes happening in the sector. You know, this is a favorite one for me, Gauri. My sense is, you know, if I were to talk about pre-COVID, largely, I think the way sales and marketing was happening in the industry was almost stagnant for the last 30 years. Even 30 years before, people were using visual aids. Even now, people are using digital aids, but it was very similar in a digital manner, but a very similar way of consuming data. I think now we are seeing more change in the last 2 years in our conversation with the doctor, in our ability to do sales and marketing than what we have done in the past. And clearly, I think we are at a cusp of change where data analytics and these are elements, different digitalization are elements which are going to really differentiate between how one company or one brand talks to the doctor compared to the others. So fairly exciting times. I've just talked about some of the trends that we are seeing in change. But obviously, what it also means is far more exciting opportunities for the next crop of talent which is going to come out and show at least some of us dinosaurs the new way of operating.
Excellent, Sandeep. Am I audible?
Yeah, got you.
Yeah. So I think you really brought out the changes that have happened and personalization. So while on one side, the world is talking about personalized medicine, Sanjiv talked about gene editing and predictive analysis. You are bringing out very important point that how do we do personalized sales and marketing? Because in the end, when content is the king, it's also very important to get the right content because every one of us are at different paths in our journeys in understanding, the brands and how I correlate with a brand would be very different. And how do we personalize? And data is at the sense. And taking again that point Sanjeev made is that convergence. In the end, it's not the electronic industry or the digital industry is one silo and healthcare is separate, where a time frozen industry, which we were doing things exactly the same way, are actually coming out and looking at data and predictive data management so that we understand our customers better. So very, very valid point. And, that's the way forward. So every student out there would understand the importance of digital technologies so that we make, the real sense there. So Farida, how did you connect with customers and what is it? Because connection is not only one-way traffic. Lot many times it so happens that a salesperson actually goes and just talks, assuming that he or she has connected to the customer. But in reality, connection is a lot more. And in the last 2 years, when pandemic has actually put up so many challenges, how is it that we can connect to our customers? What are the innovative ways of doing it?
Yes, thank you, Gauri. I think I've kind of just shared my presentation. So I will kind of answer that question that what are the innovations in Customer Connect, which is very important. And before that, I must thank the IIHMR University and its the management for inviting me for this particular presentation. Let me take you through my flow of the presentation. So I will just dwell some time on trends in customer and business behavior, a few points, touch point innovation and emotional connect cycle innovation. What I have picked up is that, and I think the thread is running very nicely between what Sanjeev said and what Sandeep also said. And I have picked up just a few trends about customer and the business behavior. And when I talk about the customer, you can take it as a patient, you can take it as an HCP, because ultimately all of us are consumers in some manner. So one of the most important trend is that want it now customer culture. And we have seen during the pandemic and because of the e-commerce, the thrust which is kind of there, that we can get everything quickly. What with your Swiggy, Instamart, and your Ola cabs and your Amazon, the way that they deliver with speed. So that has actually kind of spoiled us, and we want it now. And it is the same thing with the patients. And as a result of it, even the HCPs need to kind of respond in that manner. The second important trend is seamless omni-channel experience. And therefore, there is nothing like an online and an offline experience. All the customers, whether it is HCP or patients or whoever, they want the same experience across all the channels. And as a result of it becomes very important that we have a unified communication in order to make sure that the customer feels that, yes, there is a continuation in what the brand is kind of talking about. The third and the most important trend is that the customers, they want use of convenient and familiar channels to make the service accessible. So if you are going to kind of speak to the customer in a channel or in a platform which is not convenient to him, because nowadays we know that mobile is so very convenient, and if you are not on the mobile or you are not on a thing which is he is convenient, Instagram or Twitter or whatever, it is not going to cut ice. And therefore that is another important trend which is kind of going on. And from the business perspective, as the previous speakers have also said, that the businesses have actually kind of empowered, because of these three above trends, they have empowered our sales representatives in whichever industry you kind of talk about, as to how to kind of make sure that they remain relevant and they remain effective in of all these three trends which are there. And they have empowered them with different tools, different soft skills, and etc., in order to make them relevant. And the last and the most important is that the businesses have actually kind of gone from automation to prediction and the personalization. What Gauri, what you were talking about is that, you know, we need to kind of, with the tools of machine learning or artificial intelligence, it is now important to predict the behavior of a customer rather than to kind of, you know, follow follow the trends. So we need to create trends with the help of these important innovative tools rather than follow the trends. So I think that is going to be one of the very important piece that we need to keep in mind. Now, if you, based on these 5 trends which we have, I would just like to talk about 2 innovations. One is the touch point innovation and emotional cycle innovation. That is the connect with the customer. Now, when you see the touch points, how are we going to kind of keep in touch with our customers? And during the COVID, we realized that it is important, and physical was always there. And then we had this digital, and which was very new for the pharma industry. And then we had the audio calls, and then we had the video calls, and then we also had the hybrid. A few weeks back, I was actually reading an article in Harvard Business Review from an ex-professor from Kellogg's University of Management. And he kind of, the whole industry, the global industry is kind of wondering that because of this digital connect, which is happening across all industries, what is going to be the role of the sales reps? How are we kind of going to connect? I mean, what is he going to do? And he made a very relevant point, and he said that just as we are personalizing our communication, our services to our customers, now we need to customize the communication or the touch point channels. And that also based on the stage of the customer acquisition cycle and the persona of the customer. So, if certain customer is already a loyal customer, what are the communication channels that you are going to use? You may not want to use a physical, you might just want to use a digital, an audio or a video. If he's not your customer, what are the different communication channels which you're going to use? So this actually customizing communication channels for every HCP or any customer, depending upon the customer acquisition cycle, I feel is going to be very, very relevant in the future. And also to the fact that there are so many HCPs, we know that they do not want many representatives to come and meet them. So this is going to be very relevant. The next piece is, so after having done the touch points, what is very important is that what is the emotional touch points that we can create in the cycle for the innovation. Now we know that in order to get an emotional connect with our HCPs, I have kind of drawn this 10 circles, and these are the 10 points which normally, if you go through these 10 points, you will be able to get an emotional connect with your customer. But the point is that many of us, we do not kind of complete the circle or the cycle. We only sometimes focus on one part of it, or we focus on another part of it. But actually, if you really want to kind of get an emotional connect, and which is going to lead to not only loyal customers, but it is also going to lead to the concept called as evangelism, then we need to kind of make sure that all these 10 emotional connects are taken care of. And here, of course, comes your personalization, which is extremely important, as was mentioned by the previous speakers. Respond to the concerns on all the omni-channels wherever they are present. Respond, go above and beyond whenever an HCP provides you with what you want. Follow-ups are very important because it demonstrates that the customer matters to the organization. Keep it personal, and you can see the whole lot of things that keep in touch with the customer. Be active on social media. So you can see that this is a whole gamut of emotional connect, and it is a cycle. And if a person kind of goes through the cycle, at the end of it, what will come out? The customer is going to become your evangelist, and he is going to lead to more customers in the future. So therefore, what I would like to say over here is that there are two very important connects with the customer based on all the trends which are happening. One is, of course, our touch points based on any medium that you use. And it has to be catered, it has to be customized depending upon the stage of the life cycle of the customer. And the second one is that we need to follow the emotional connect the entire cycle in order to lead to evangelist, and so that the connect becomes much more stronger. So Gauri, this is all what I had to say. Thank you so much.
Great, Farida. I think, it's not only the phygital connect, but it's the emotional connect. And that's the innovative step we have to take if we have to truly connect to our customers. In a very digital world where everything is around artificial intelligence, artificial way of doing things, I think people and customers are craving for that emotional touch. And that's something is very critical for our representatives and for us to empower them so that that is ensured. So point very well taken. And who else can talk about, building that emotional brand and branding into building a brand that became a mega brand. Mr. Ashok Jain has handled so many brands, and from a small launch to a mega success, he has so many in his kitty. So recently, Dolo has brought smiles to our faces, not only because of the pandemic, but also a lot of memes and jokes which went around it. People actually enjoyed that emotional connect with Dolo, so it became part of their virtual world or viral world. So, Mr. Jain, how did you do this magic? How did Dolo become such huge success in a very generic category of paracetamol?
Thanks, Gauri, and it's a really privilege to be with you all this evening. At IIM Ahmedabad, when we were students, we were all taught case studies. So I thought I'll just take a case study of Dolo 650 and keep it very simple. I know we have just 10, 12 minutes or so, and use a lot of visuals. I'm sure your professors must have taught you that it's all about marketing and innovation. Think different. And you can see the Tylenol, how the people have used it, different indications over a period of time. You can see think innovatively, think brand name, very catchy brand names, whether doctor, ortho, paid safa, and some simple innovations. Art of marketing is the art of brand building. If you're not a brand, you are a commodity. So with this, let's go into the Dolo, that what we have done on the Dolo in terms of at the doctor's level, trade channels, patients, head office employees, field force. At the doctors, I think Dolo, a lot of people heard today. Its way back was launched and we had a one Dolo Power. It was more OTC kind of thing, and many years back, competing with Ultragen, 500 milligram. The company was wanting to create a differentiation. gotten to meet doctors, HCPs, discuss with them, and they found that in a crowded market, don't launch 500, launch 650. And that's how the 650 Dolo was started way back in 1993. Then once from 93 onwards, we continued the Dolo in the fever, not a great thing. I think a lot of changes took place in 2013, so around 10 years back. And 10 years back, when we met a lot of HCPs, what we realized that fever is a serious issue. And there are multiple types of fever. The diagnosis is important. How you treat fever is important. And they said, why don't you own the space of fever? And therefore, that's a time we started something called as Fever Research Academy. We got the lot of doctors, pediatricians, physicians, infection specialists, had a lot of brainstorming session that what as a company we can do to service a lot of general practitioners and the general physicians. And after 2-3 days of brainstorming came in that we should have some non-commercial autonomic body in terms of Fever Foundation. So Fever Foundation was set up. Then they used to meet in every 3 months, decide what to do, and a lot of agenda were created in terms of variety of fevers and how to treat them. And then they started writing books. We started having annual conferences. We started, first one was in 2018, which was physically, one at Bangalore, and then we had at various places in India. Lot of books were written by the Indian doctors on various topics they would pick up every year. That continued for last 4 years. In the pandemic period, where it was not possible to reach physically, we had like this digital conferences. And in those last digital conference we had at a point of time, some 18,000 doctors joining this conference. And you can see some photographs, etc. on that. In terms of the patients, what we realized was that initially this 650 is a bigger tablet. Bigger tablets means difficult to swallow. And then I think we had our research how we make it much better. And our suggestion or our innovation came in, why not we make, someone brought in an almond and say, why not we make an almond shaped tablet? And that's how this oval shaped tablet was decided on. We got in a better bulk drug, less impurity, etc., etc. And that helped us to have a better adherence. Also with the COVID vaccination, a lot of doctors came in and said, what is that you can contribute to this cause? And we said, the discussion took place and we said we can contribute in terms of asking patients where there was a hesitancy to come and vaccinate. So initially it was for 60 years plus, and we created those posters, put that into various clinics. When the 45 years were allowed, then again we had with talking through the posters for them to come in and vaccinate themselves. We made it not in one language, we made in multiple languages. We got the list of vaccination centers, use our large field force to go meet the doctors, put up the posters there, put the do's and don'ts, what kind of the things could be done in question answers, etc. So those kind of the things we did it. On the trade, we were clear that a lot of patients would require paracetamol 650. And therefore, our responsibility was to ensure that Dolo 650 is available to as many chemists as possible, always. And then we use the mobile technology to communicate with them, talk to them, see if they require any stocks, ensure that as fast as possible, it can move in from stockists to the retailers. From the field force, because it's a very low value prescription, the field force did not have any interest to sell this product for many years. So we created lot of passion for the field force by saying that we would be one of those few companies who would own up fever. You in the COVID period, how it's important for you to help in this cause, etc. And we did a lot of sampling, even from the top management, with lot of government officers calling us that you should make sure enough stocks of the Dolo, etc. I think every day we were wanting to be sure that we are able to produce enough paracetamol tablets in the form of Dolo 650. Also, it's important to note at this stage, though the raw material prices have grown up by some 300% and the final price remaining the same, actually it was not making any much money. But still we said, as an Indian company, we should go out and don't worry about the profits. Profits would follow. And why I'm showing that, many of you would have noticed the Dolo 650 now, but it's a long journey of last many years, because of which what we are seeing in today. So some 2010, 13, 14, some awards coming, etc., etc. Lot of media coverage, which some of you would have seen there here. And all of that came in because of this third wave of pandemic, wherein the HCP decided that paracetamol 650 is the right dose to start with it. And recently this pharma ET brought in that it's a combination of right dose of perception and prescriptions. So with this, if you really see the innovations we did it in this was in terms of the brand naming, which was a very short and crisp brand name. Innovation was in terms of the tablet shape, which was an oval shaped tablet. Innovation was in terms of strength, that instead of everyone was having 500, we had 650. We picked up high fever. We did not clutter with pain or headache, etc. We said we would only concentrate and be focused on high fever. We did a lot of, as I mentioned to you, Fever Foundation, FIFON, Fever Research Academy, CME, books, posters on COVID, etc. These were some of the little innovations, because of which, if you see, the sales have been consistently going up. And the good news is, in the September, October, the Dolo 650 became the #1 prescribed brand in the country. And in the January, the AWACS said the Dolo range is the #1 brand by the sales in IPM for the month of January. So I think, to summarize, in my mind, innovation is observing the things, using the common sense, and it's not expensive. As long as you can see that and do a little innovation, it works in the brand building, as long as you remain consistent with that. So with this, I just thank Gauri for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. Excellent example. And the way you actually looked at every aspect of the brand, and very differently and innovatively. The brand name itself with having very special name, and very interestingly putting 650 right there. So the story was right there in one line, very clear focus, no ambiguity. And that's the way every aspect you looked at it in a very innovative way. What an example. And we all are so proud of it, because the entire country is currently talking about Dolo. So excellent way of, building a brand. So I think today all the speakers talked about very different ways in which one can look at this space in healthcare, and how we can actually innovate and do things differently, because change is constant, and the only way to deal with it, to look at it differently and ideate it differently. Some of the questions, very interesting questions are coming, and they are just running one after the other. So let me pick one or two from there. One question, which not only here, but I hear very commonly everywhere, is that is sales representative going to be out of his job? What do you think? While we are innovating and digitalizing the whole thing, do you think role of a sales rep is in danger? Anybody can take this. I mean,
Yeah. So Gauri, let me try to take a shot at it. Right. My sense is, I think the scope of the sales rep will change from what he or she is doing as of now. Clearly, I think as the power equation in this whole doctor, pharmacy, hospital setup is changing, which requires that obviously, as with any other job that we are seeing, the contours of the job will change. And my sense is the industry will also follow the same suit. Right? I don't think we should be adventurous enough to say that the role will not exist, but yeah, the shape and form of the role will definitely change. And I think it's important that all of us evolve accordingly to be ready for what's there and on offer for us.
Absolutely. And being ready and being, adapting ourselves to new realities, be it any job, be it a sales rep job or a job of a director or managing director, the way around is to adapt to the new realities and learn in that direction. So very interestingly said. There is one question, Sanjiv, for you. You talked about PharmEasy, and PharmEasy is an example, of innovation. But has it reached? And isn't the reach to the bottom of the pyramid is important? Covin is one example. The person who is asking this question is saying that it has reached everywhere. But all these digital things and all these things are at the top of the pyramid. Do they really, make a difference?
So Gauri, first of all, I replied to the question saying, look at COVID, saying, did it reach everyone? So I think my approach to this is very simple, that look, the technology that is used for reach, for simple services, if you can buy, a person can buy on Amazon, can order food, can certainly look for medical services and health services also, because the technology and platforms are not very different. So this thinking that will it reach, in fact, the possibility of services reaching the bottom of the pyramid or the last mile connectivity has dramatically improved because of this. In the earlier case, we had done a study with IQ at OPP. I remember that study where we showed that it takes travel of 47 kilometers to reach a tertiary care center on an average from a rural place. You can imagine the reach issues that were there. It took minimum 10 kilometers distance to reach a secondary care center. All those distinctions are going to vanish because of technology. And you're seeing it happening. Is it? So what we need to see is the backup of internet going to happen or connectivity going to happen through the rural territories? And if that happens, people are getting very, very savvy. See, look, what we learned during, and since I was participating in the Vaccine Advisory Council, one of the data that got thrown out of all that activities that we were trying to draw for the country strategy was the fact that 65% of the people could easily access COVID through their mobile phones. 65% could easily access, 35% needed assistance. So if that is the kind of reach that you're talking, then I don't feel that this barrier is going to be the real barrier anymore.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Sanjiv. Last question. Akanksha is telling me, yes, the time is running, but there is one very interesting question, and that's for Mr. Jain for you. That is, what is the future of OTC? Do you think that as patients are becoming more involved, will there be more of self-medication? And are we looking at a big OTC market in India, which somehow is there in a very quasi form?
My sense is that we are all via doctors. So our approach is the doctors will continue to play an important role going forward also. Having said that, maybe in some of those wellness products, OTC would play an important role with the increased disposable income. So maybe the sectors like vitamin, minerals, and those things, OTC would have a role. But if you take other disease patterns, I think the doctors will continue to play an important role.
Absolutely. So true. Thank you so much. The time is less, and therefore, though questions are just running, I'll not be able to go ahead with it. Handing over to you, Dr. Surya, and thank you, the entire panel. It was really enriching to understand from your lens how innovation can really change the space. So over to you, Dr. Surya.
Thank you, Ms. Gauri Chaudhari. Amazing discussion. You really held it very well. And I think everybody has must enjoyed it. Let me tell you, the format was really different from the other sessions or the previous session at least. So thank you very much for keeping it very simple, engaged, as well as interesting. Now, good evening to one and all present here. Honorable Chair, Ms. Gauri Chaudhari, respected invited speakers, and all the participants. I feel honored and privileged to get the opportunity to propose a vote of thanks on this special occasion. On behalf of IIHMR University, I would like to express my sincere thanks to all esteemed delegates of the conference for their presence and contribution. I extend my gratitude to conference patron Dr. S.D. Gupta, Trustee Secretary, IIHMR University, Mr. Sudarshan Jain, Chairperson, IIHMR University, Conference Chair, Dr. P.R. Sodani, President, IIHMR University. I extend heartfelt thanks to Honorable Chair, Ms. Gauri Chaudhari, Founder, Brand, Innerworld, and Communications Advisor, Indian Pharmaceutical Association, to take out time from her busy schedule and chair the session on pharmaceutical management for Pradanya 2022 Track 3. Thank you, madam. And let me tell you, this session was really fruitful and interesting to all. I personally appreciate the format. Also, I would like to extend special thanks to Mr. Ashok Jain, Executive Director, Micro Labs Limited, for inspiring us through his talk on innovation in brand building. His views and insights was remarkable, especially the case of Dolo. Thank you, sir. I extend my gratitude to Ms. Farida Hussain, Vice President Marketing, USV, who talked about innovation customer connect in the pharma industry and highlighted the need for impactful customer connect. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to thank Mr. Sandeep Khandelwal, Head India Business, Dr. Reddy's Laboratory, for his exemplary relevance talk on innovation in pharma sales and marketing, particularly in this new age. It was so inspiring, sir. Thank you very much. The session by Mr. Sanjiv Navangul, Managing Director and CEO, Bharat Serums, on convergence of innovation technologies in today's healthcare sector. I must say it was really amazing insight which you have given, that the patient should be at the center of innovation. So thank you very much, sir. I'm thankful to all the participants for joining this session. We have been fortunate to have some of the eminent persons from industry and academia as the participant in this session. I'm sure that all must have benefited by attending this event. I must thank the organizing secretary, Dr. Mahendra Kumar, Dean Proctor, IIHMR University, conference organizing chair, members, IT team, volunteers, especially Anup and Dhriti, for providing immense support for this session. Thank you very much. Please do join the track 4 of Pharma, track 4 on promoting academia industry collaboration tomorrow, followed by the valedictory function. Thank you very much.
Sir, I would request all the speakers to just have a group photograph. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Reddy, you have any announcement to make? Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Surya Prakash, and session chair, and all the speakers for such an insightful and interactive session. You all have enlightened us with such great details on the topic in such a comprehensive manner. Surely we all will be benefited from this. We will resume day 3 of Pradanya 2022 at 6 p.m. tomorrow. So stay tuned for the next track and valedictory session. Thank you.
See you all tomorrow, bright and early for us.
Yes,